Hello, my name is Heather Leigh Cameron. I'm 31 years old, and seeing as this is International Women's Day, I thought I'd talk about my journey as a woman and my career as a journalist. We have to go back to 1994. I was born in 1987, but the only funny story there is that I started kindergarten at age 4 after breaking out of my daycare, walking quarter mile to the kindergarten, interrupting a class, and saying some very complicated words. It's a very funny story. But we fast forward to 1994. I am not that good at math, so I'll just say I was very young. I believe I was about 6 or 7, and my first article was more of a story, but I was first published in the Foothills School Showcase in June of 1994. And my article was my story. I guess it would be more of a story than an article, wouldn't it? My story was called The Gingerbread Man, and it's a very entertaining story, and you can find it on my Facebook page. I won't dwell on it. So, over the years in elementary, junior high, and high school, I spent a lot of time writing creative things, simply to cope with being the ghost and the socially awkward kid who didn't really fit in anywhere. I was also in show choir. That's another creative art that I enjoy. Well, I graduated high school in 2005 with 166 credits because I never gave myself a break. I worked myself to the bone, and I don't regret it. And so I was going to upgrade after high school because I really didn't have an idea as to what I was going to do. But my mother, Martha Lee Campbell Cameron Nickel, bless her heart, she came to me one day and said, "Hey, you know what? You like writing, so why don't you try and apply for this print journalism program at the local college?" And so I was like, all right. So Mom took me, and I applied and got accepted to this communication arts print journalism program the Friday before classes were due to start. And I mean, at the time, my now disability was left undiagnosed, and I was a bit weird, but I was very excited to take on that journey of a college education. And granted, my grades weren't the best because I was still finding my way. I was only 17 years old when I went to college, but I did it. I have so many little memories of being in that program. But I started the art of newspaper reporting right away. This one teacher, Darcy Cavanaugh, he used to send his students, including me, on little weekly quiz hunts. And sometimes we were allowed to use the internet, and sometimes we were not. That made it all the more fun. And so that's where I started to learn the art of correct reporting. I mean, the quizzes were just for fun, but it taught us how to research information both on and off the computer, because we might be in a situation where we might not have the computer or anything but a computer. And so I appreciate that. We also learned a lot of different things that would help us to write for a newspaper, because that's what I and the others did eventually, is we wrote for the Lethbridge College Endeavour, and we ourselves put the paper together using InDesign and various editing processes, and it was all a very large amount of work. Production took 2 days per week, and we worked very hard at it. We were very successful. I've got many articles from the Endeavour. My interviewing skills at the time weren't the best, but so it is. I mean, college students aren't always experts at everything. That's why they go to college. And so it was that I graduated in 2007, like after a practicum, because at the end of year 2, back when I did the program, it's different now, but back when I did the program, students were required to do a 3-week practicum at the end of April. And I sent endless resumes out to endless papers. I was willing to go anywhere and everywhere to do this practicum. But bless his heart, Frank McTighe, owner and editor of the Fort Macleod Gazette, decided to take me on as a practicum student. And so I moved out to Fort Macleod temporarily. I boarded with somebody, and I worked my butt off for those 3 weeks. Honestly, there's just so many memories I have of being in Fort Macleod and working as hard as I did. But I just have immense gratitude to Frank, because he was the first hardcore newspaper to give me a chance. I mean, I will say this. I do have to thank Christy Fisher in 2005, because I did my business services work over at her video store. This was back when video stores were still around. And she allowed me to write movie reviews for this little paper called the Raymond Expressions, which is still around today, and I did a few of those. So my start in journalism actually came in 2005. So if you look at today, it's 2019, so that's like 14 years that I've been in this career. So thank you to Christy Fisher for starting me on that. I never knew where it would take me. And thank you to Frank for giving me my start in the professional news arena. Like the Endeavor and the Expressions were like student-run publications, and they taught us how to do things. But the Fort Macleod Gazette really allowed me to get my hands dirty, quote-unquote, in the world of journalism. So thank you to Frank and Emily McTighe. You both are wonderful people. Anyway, I did articles for them for about, 10 years. I haven't done any lately, but I won't rule out doing any in the future. And in 2008, I began also freelancing for the West Wind Weekly out of McGrath. These are all small towns in Alberta, but you appreciate them when you yourself come from a small town and you spend your whole life living in small towns. It's a great feeling. And I did these amazing articles for the West Wind Weekly, mostly summer things, but still I had the Fort Macleod Gazette at the same time, so I was very busy. I did lots of work for the Fort Macleod Gazette in 2008, 2009, 2010. Not so much in 2011, 2012, or 2013, but a little bit. I also, in that time frame, began looking into Second Life, starting in about 2008, and I came across this little group called United Federation Starfleet. And so I did some work for the Delta Communicator and the United Federation Starfleet Second Life newsletter. I created about 37 newsletters and 3 issues of the Delta Communicator, I believe. This is all done in Word programs, and it was very hard work, but it was very fulfilling. I don't do that anymore. But I consider it part of my media freelancing. I mean, it is journalism in a sense. And I did a little bit of work for the Lethbridge Herald as well in 2014. I covered this art article, and it was very lovely. And I did another one in 2015, and that's when the work with the Fort Macleod Gazette and the West Wind Weekly began to pick up. As 2016 came about, I put some articles in the regional newspaper. I put a poem in the Lamont Leader. I did more for Fort McLeod. But there was a defining moment that really turned the art of journalism into the method of survival, because in October 2014, October 26th to be exact, my biological father, John Robert Cameron, passed away from a very rare cancer of the adrenal gland. It was stage 4 when they found it in the middle of July 2014. And he had some personal problems that I won't go into here that caused him to want to die faster. It's a very unfortunate situation, but it taught me appreciation for my health and for the gifts that I had, and I strived very hard to use those gifts of writing, of photography, of freelancing to make my world a little easier to live in. I made a blog about that, and I've got several blogs. I also wrote a blog about a service mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that I went on in 2013 to 2014 at the Lethbridge Field Office and Bishop's Storehouse. Some people say it's not a real mission. Heck yeah, it's a real mission, and I wrote a blog about it. I also wrote a blog about different reflections I've had over the years. And I have a blog about the endometriosis that has been a part of my life for just a few years now, but it prompted me to ask Star Trek celebrity Kate Mulgrew about chronic conditions, and she just gave me some beautiful advice about it, and I'm very grateful. Anyway, after my father died, I stayed with my mother. My brother moved to the city as a way to deal with his grief, but I love him, and that's his choice. I stayed with my mother, and we moved into this trailer park in the same town that we were living in, and I ended up getting a position as a town council reporter, like a reporter for the meetings at town council. It was a bi-monthly thing in the town of Raymond, and that really helped me to be able to support my mother emotionally and financially, because she paid rent and I paid everything else, and the job with the Westwind Weekly covering town councils really helped, because town council meetings are the most interesting things you'll ever see in a small town sometimes, and public meetings can go on for a while, but you know what, they're very interesting. You learn to appreciate the little things when you're in journalism. You really do. And I mean, I was on disability at this point, but it took everything just to survive those hard months. Eventually, Mom and I moved into the city so she could go to school, and I decided to go back to school through the BYU Idaho Pathway Program, and I got that certificate in about, what was it, July of 2016. And then, after a lot of prayer and pondering, I decided to go on and get a certificate in administrative assistant that September, so September 2016, and you know, my mom remarried in January 2016, so I was able to focus on myself and my self-development and my development as a person with a disability and being a person of distinction. So I went back to school. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints paid for it through funds through the local employment center. And surprisingly enough, I got all A's. I don't know how, but I managed to do that. My experience in the Pathway program and in the Speaking Partners program that I did in the second semester of the Pathway program, which involved me teaching English to someone from Brazil via Skype using lesson plans provided to us by the school, it allowed me to focus so much more on being the best that I could be in the education that I was getting. So I graduated from that in 2017, and I tried very hard to find work in that field, but you know how it is. People in the normal world are so scared of people with disabilities without really getting to know them. If they see the word age funding or disability, they freak out and don't even give the person a chance. It's unfortunate. But that's reality, and we need to change that, don't we? So I continued on. I freelanced for the Fort Macleod Gazette. I continued that. And then in 2018, a friend of mine, Carmen Letourneau, she invited me to come and take pictures and do a story on her daughter Soleil's violin recital that she was doing collaboratively with some other people for a grade exam. And so I did that. And I submitted the story to the Lethbridge Herald. And I finally, and suddenly one day I got this email from Maggie Belizel, I can't pronounce her name, I don't think, from the Herald, and she asked me if she could give my name to the editor of the Prairie Post, Ryan Dahlman, because the article was very good, and she felt like she wanted to refer me based on the quality of the article, and I was like, sure, why not? And I admit I didn't expect much, but thank you, Maggie, for doing that. And so I ended up having this phone interview with Ryan, and immediately my fears of, oh, I'm a person with a disability, wanting to do a job like this. But he's totally cool about it. He gets it. He's very understanding. The phone interview went very well. And since the middle of 2018, I've been doing articles for the Prairie Post newspaper, and that includes writing almost everything in the Centennial magazine for Nobleford, Alberta, because they celebrated their centennial in 2018, and I got to pretty much go to town on it. I didn't put together the magazine, but I got to write a lot of the pieces for it, and that was a very big boost in my career. I've done a lot of work over the years. I've been in freelance media for 14 years. Journalism, photography. I write fan fiction on fanfiction.net. My handle is Chameleon777. Go check it out. I've also been on YouTube since like 2008, 2009, doing scripture devotionals, singing, dancing, clarinetting. Just a whole gamut of freelancing. And the Cooking with Heather series has been around since, I believe, 2011, when I started living in a roommate situation away from my family home. I've been in the media business and media freelancing for a very long time, but you know what? I feel like I'm making strides for the disability community. I feel like I'm being an example of what life can be like. I feel like I'm saying that just because one has a disability doesn't mean you have to let that limit you. You may learn differently, you may process differently, you may communicate differently, but you shouldn't be afraid to pursue your dreams just because of a disability. You shouldn't let people's perceptions and words stop you from becoming who you believe you can become. On top of all that, I've written many poems, self-published a poetry book. And I'm continuing to write poems in hopes that they will someday be published. I also have novels in the works. And just a lot of writing. Writing is the way I communicate. I mean, I've gotten better over the years at communicating verbally and being in social situations. I'm not perfect, but I can do the work that's given me, and I'm not ashamed of it. I'm very grateful for the support I've had over the years. My mom, my dear Papa Daddy, Alvin Roy Nickel, who is married to my mom, Martha, and all the people who have given me opportunities to progress through my career. My awesome little brother, John Robert Cameron Jr., he went to university for accounting and management, and I'm very proud of him and I love him. All the people who take the time to care about me and not just look at my stuff so they can make fun of me. Any genuine fans on YouTube. There's so many people that I could mention, but it is International Women's Day, and I thought I'd promote myself as someone who really is a woman of distinction. I'm undiscovered. I mean, I have the belief that maybe something like Survivor or Big Brother might help me become discovered, but you know what? I'm an undiscovered country. And I'm fascinating.